Well, you also started that rumor too. You started this rumor on Instagram, like at the beginning of COVID, that I was like 5'5" and 160 pounds.
My best troll ever was convincing the internet that Matt is like a very undersized lifter who isn't strong. And then
I love it.
And then he busts out a 700-pound deadlift, and people are just like, "Wait, what?" And
then, hold on a second.
And then there's a picture of us side by side, and the people realize that Matt outweighs me by like 60 pounds. And
like, oh wow, he's actually pretty big.
What happened? His thighs are bigger than your waist. It's like, yes, I'm very slim, and I play the angles on the internet, and Matt's very thick, and the angles aren't his friends.
Yes.
We have opposite lives.
Right. Somehow like we'll hit the same angle and I will look smaller in the same exact angle like photo than Kyle does. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense at all.
But again, I feel like I'm winning. So yeah, I think,
also, by the way, we're recording all this. So this is going to be included on the podcast. This is going to be here.
I do that as well. I do that as well for my podcast. I just hit record and start chatting. And people like freak out. They're like, oh, what? We're recording all of that?
Yeah.
Dude, well,
this is the best.
What, are you scared?
Yeah.
What were you planning on saying? Like,
this
is
exactly.
The best part. But yeah, so everybody who listens to this hopefully knows who we are at this point. But Luke, like, who are you? I think is the most important question here.
Yeah, well, I got an Instagram account with like 30 or 35,000 people, and I train people online, and that's kind of me. That's pretty much it, man.
Bringing the clout, man, and I appreciate that. It's already validated.
Well, for some people, that's a big deal. And for other people, are like, I don't give a fuck about that. Who cares?
I mean, obviously, we all know that Instagram fame is the most important thing. And chasing clout is all that really matters in the world.
Absolutely.
You could be the most successful person in the world, but if you don't tell people on Instagram how successful you are, then you're not actually successful. It doesn't count.
That's true.
It actually amazes me to this day that people will just like follow you to watch you work out on the internet. There's nothing more confusing to my kids because my wife has like a real job, and they're just like, yeah, Dad, like for the longest time they got like working out and working confused, and they thought I was like going into some office at like 5 a.m. before they were going to bed. Like, oh, Daddy already worked today. I was like, no, I worked out.
It sounds like your average personal trainer, man.
Yeah.
They're way ahead of the curve at 9 years old. They're like,
yeah.
I think I understand.
They are future superstars in the fitness industry.
Yeah, I think I understand the way the world works right now.
Yeah.
No, but you actually put out really good content, which I can always appreciate. It's not just pictures of you running reels of working out like what Matt and I do.
Yeah.
So you know, from your perspective, you put out a ton of, you're one of my favorite nutrition accounts to follow because you actually talk about real nutrition. And I always appreciate that because that's always, in my opinion and experience, like a way stickier topic to dip into than training, especially when you talk about, you know, just emotional beliefs and dogma and people being really invested into specific, you know, tribes or you know, diet tribes or whatever. So I always appreciate the fact that, you know, you put a lot of science out there, and I know you also have your own platform, you know, online where you put out a ton of, you know, research-based things and science-based things. So that's something that I always appreciate and something that I love seeing as well. Kind of like, what's your experience with that? Do you get people that are just like, no, like yelling at you on the internet, or are people pretty like into it, you know, and down with it?
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, firstly, thanks for the nice compliments, but yeah, you know, I really gravitate away from like posting my own training and all that sort of stuff too much. And it's funny because I often get people saying like, oh, I want to see what you do for training. What do you eat every day? And I'm like, it doesn't really fucking matter what I do, to be honest with you. And it's much simpler than they think. I think they're looking for like, oh, this guy must have some trick up his sleeve. And it's like, yeah, not really. It's just being consistent over a long period of time. It's some basic shit. Yeah, no, I think mostly people are pretty into what I do. I don't get a lot of like really combative people. I mean, there's going to be some big accounts out there that put out a ton of science info, like your Lane Nortons and your Martin McDonald's and stuff like that. And, you know, they obviously like to stir the pot a bit. So they get a bit of pushback. They're like fighting people in comments. And for me, it's not really my style. So yeah, I just trying to put stuff out there and be like, hey, this is the challenge for me really, is that there's a lot of nuance to all of this and there's a lot of context. And, you know, I'm trying to put out some information that's more like, hey, this is some food for thought. Like maybe this applies to you, maybe it doesn't. And that's kind of my angle and stuff, but it's a case of like, there's a lot to take into account, like you mentioned. It's not just a case of like, give people some macros and off you go. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be as freaking deep as you want it to be when it comes to nutrition and how that interacts with lifestyle and your beliefs and your overall well-being and all of this sort of stuff. So I guess I sort of see myself as just providing like, hey, let me just give you a little bit of food for thought in this little dark area of something and see if that sparks something in your head. And maybe in this little area, it'll spark something for somebody else. And I find that sort of stuff interesting. Yeah.
It's also got to be really, really hard to troll you, because the amount of times that I've seen you post something on Instagram where the first slide is just, I was wrong. And then it's like 6 things of like, I used to think this, now I think this. Like, it's got to be so difficult for people to find something that they're like, I hate this dude, because it's like, oh, well, he just said he was wrong about like 5 things and he just said, here's why I was wrong about them and here's what I think now. Like that's for me, I think that's one of the things that makes you one of my favorite accounts to follow, is like, you have no fear or nothing in you is like upset or nervous about like admitting that like, I was wrong about this thing that I thought was really, really important. And here's why I was wrong about it. And here's the things that showed me that I was wrong about those things that I thought. And I think that level of like transparency and honesty with it is hugely important, because the biggest thing that I see with a lot of people now is people are just getting frustrated when people are starting to discount old systems and admit that they were wrong about stuff. Right. But that's how we grow and evolve. And like, you're the first person to say, I was wrong about all of these things that I thought were important. And like, what made you start doing that? And what got you to that point where you were comfortable saying, I was wrong about X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, man. It was something where I kind of recognized in myself that I was terrified of looking like I got something wrong, or like, you know, I was terrified of the gotcha moment. I was terrified of the moment where I posted something or presented something and someone put their hand up and went, well, actually, in this study by nye. And I was like, just so scared of that moment. And I went like, why the fuck am I afraid of that? Like, that's not a big deal. You know, and so it was all of the gotchas on Instagram and this kind of thing where we've got a short format. We can't give context and nuance to absolutely every situation. And so it's kind of like, well, I'm putting these ideas out there, but just bear in mind, this doesn't cover every situation and there's context, right? And so it was just a case of slowly evolving from people trying to have some kind of, well, what about this weird niche situation? Like my cousin has 1 foot and they, you know, like all this stuff. It's like, dude, it's a 1 in a million case, but they somehow think they gotcha with it. And so I kind of just ended up going, well, like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, I'm wrong in that case. Yeah, I'm wrong in that case. Yeah, it probably doesn't apply to that. And then I realized like, hey, people actually really appreciate this because you seem like a real person then. You're not just like some scientist in the ivory tower kind of going like, well, I got all the answers because I got all the data, you know? So that's kind of what prompted it for me. And it's incredibly freeing when you can step out and say like, hey, I'm free to change my mind about something. And that doesn't mean that I'm changing it every week, but it does mean that my ideas evolve. And if I'm wrong about something, then that's kind of a good thing, right?
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is it's not like you're saying that like, it's an evolution of your thought process and an evolution of your ideas. It's not sitting there going, I'm just going to throw out all of this stuff because none of it was important. Right? We're like, you're still taking stuff out of what you knew previously and now applying a different lens to it, or looking at it through a different scope and seeing it differently and applying the new information that you've got to the old stuff to continuously audit your own things and add to your own model, which is, I think, is probably one of the coolest things that I see on social media, because it's something that happens with like 5 people in the fitness industry total, I think.
It's not just like hot takes every week and then like, oh, actually, no, I got that wrong. But here's another 5 hot takes for you. It's it's like
all last weeks were wrong, but here's this one.
yeah, I got new stuff for you guys. I got new stuff. But no, it is. It's definitely like evolving. And I think most of those posts are like, hey, I was wrong about this, but here's like the element of truth that was in what I used to believe. And now there's like a few other like bits and pieces that I can add to that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just an evolution. It's just continuously adding more pieces to the puzzle, which is super cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm wrong, I just kind of switch my format and hope nobody notices.
Yeah, just pretend it never happened.
I just hope people don't like scroll down my feed and they're like, "Hey, but a year ago you were doing this." I'm like, yeah, I don't
Shut up.
That's
block.
That's the beauty of Instagram is that like people forget what you posted last week, so it kind of doesn't matter.
I get a lot of the like exactly what you're saying, where people like the outlier conversations. Like I literally had a post about like, over queuing clients, a couple weeks ago and just picking better exercise selections instead. And a guy was like, well, what about kids? And I responded back, I'm like, hey, like I honestly, like, how young kids are you talking about? You should probably just let them play on the playground and like run around, right? And he's like, but what if they're blind? And I'm like, like what? Like, what? I mean, listen, man, if you train like blind adolescents, like, yeah, man, you should probably describe the exercise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Probably use some tactile feedback.
Yeah, like maybe that's the scenario, right? It wasn't really what I was talking about, but yeah, it's like the outliers, and then like I also love the ones where people just come in with like their own narrative, where they're just like, they start arguing with something you never even said. And you're just like, literally didn't write that.
Yeah. Where did you get this from?
You're getting in an argument with yourself now. Like I did not write that in my post at all. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, it's like the meme that keeps going around in nutrition, where it's like, I really enjoy apples, and people are like, you hate oranges. How dare you say that about them? I never, where do you get this from?
Dude, the post that I made about tempo recently, where I was like, I changed my mind about, generating momentum can actually change like how an exercise's resistance curve works.
Fantastic post, by the way. If you guys haven't seen that one, I would definitely recommend looking at it.
Yeah, it was cool. So I did the biomechanics thing from N1 with like Kasim and stuff, and that kind of made me think more about that. But this guy messages me and he's like, oh, well, Tom Purvis was talking about this decades ago. I'm like, all right. That's cool, man. I just told you I was wrong, and then I changed my mind on it. Like, what do you want from me?
Like, I'm almost positive I did not say that I created this thought process and concept.
My post was literally like, I've changed my mind on this recently. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah, it's a new idea to me. You can't read every book and whatever along the way. It's definitely. The internet is such a weird place, man. And the world is a weird place. So I shouldn't caveat that. But it's so funny because I always relate this back to like the younger people that we work with, where it's like you see the same caricatures online that I used to see like in the Gold's Gym I worked out in like college. Like now you're just seeing them with like followers and a voice, but they were always like, and I hate to be stereotypical, like, there were always the girls on the step mills doing kickbacks. There were always the dudes in stringers lifting like, benching 185 and just acting like they were super strong. And
screaming and curling in the squat rack.
There's always the power lifter just surrounded by piles of chalk on the ground.
They bring their own folding chair.
Yeah, resting, sitting on like one of the 2 bench presses in front of the rack, so nobody could use either one of them, and resting for 10 minutes. Like this.
I got 2 sets left, so it'll be about 40 minutes.
Yeah, like it was always a thing, So I look at it now as being like an old person who lifted pre-internet pretty much. And I'm just like, it's the same people. Like, people don't change, right? Like, you're just more aware of all these people now. And it's kind of interesting to watch people just react to the actions of these tribes. This is literally just like cultural, like it's sociocultural of what the gym is, right? And it's like, it's actually kind of, we've turned this like microcosm of like your local gym into this macrocosm of the internet. And now you have, now the gym, the girl on the treadmill is a Gymshark model with 3 million followers. And the powerlifter guy is just angry and yelling at everybody with smelling salts. just raging on the internet.
And then there's Kyle running away from everybody.
And then there's me just
Yeah.
like running as fast as I can away from any kind of strength training that tries to sneak up on me in the corner. So
yeah, it's intense. It's a crazy world out there, and like you're right. It just, I don't know, when you suddenly, like, if you were the weird guy at the gym who, like, I don't know, there used to be this freaking guy who at one of the gyms I worked at who like stacked up the prowler with every plate in the gym, and then he tried to push it and he couldn't move it. Right, it took him like 45 minutes to get it from one end of the track to the other. That guy now has some tribe on Instagram where there's like fucking thousands of them doing that shit, you know? So
and they're like,
it's intense.
This one move will get you jacked. And it's like, the 45-minute continuous prowler push that you don't even have to turn around. You just put 650 pounds on it or whatever it is.
Dude,
and you just,
automatic way to get an audience in the gym is to like take all of the plates so no one else can train and just like push them up and down the gym.
He was the guy with the leg press with like 20 plates doing like micro, and you were hoping it didn't turn into a gym fail situation that you had. And you're just like, don't lock out your knees, don't do it, don't do it.
It's intense, and I mean, there's now that tribe out there preaching that sort of stuff. So you see all this crazy shit, and it's like, it's weird because I feel like there is like these little nuggets of gold to be found on social media now, where it's like there's some people and some ideas I would have never connected with previous to this. Like, I'm not reading this shit in a magazine, you know what I mean? But at the same time, you gotta sift through the weirdness to get there sometimes. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot in our groups because we have a lot of people who, especially in the last year, obviously, like they were exclusively in-person coaches and working in facilities and have now had to shift online, and they like have no following, no page to speak of, and they're just like, the internet's terrible and this, and it's like, well, I mean, like, your perception of Instagram is probably like really reflective on like who you follow.
Yeah,
right? Because like from my perspective, it's like, I'm looking through stuff and like, and making, network, like I never would have met you in any way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, even, Matt and I, we always joke about like, I've met Matt in person twice, and we've worked together for almost 2 years now. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we have this whole business where we're working with coaches and we're talking every single day and interacting with one another. And we've only met twice, right. In person. So, and luckily those like went well. That would have been an awkward breakup.
yeah.
If I met him for the first time, I'm like, man, I don't really like you. But, so it's definitely one of those things where like, like we're, talking to people in different countries and people that just in the industry we never would have met. And it's a beautiful thing. Like, it's really awesome. And you can get exposed to so many thoughts. And, it's like that like mute button is like the best thing that ever happened to me. It's like now it's just like, like if somebody trolls my page, I used to engage, and now I just block them. If somebody's, saying a bunch of stuff repetitively that I'm just like, okay, like I see this in like a 5 straight posts, like I'll just mute people. Doesn't mean I don't like them. It just means like, hey, I want to follow more people who challenge my belief system more so than just like confirm it. If you're just basically posting the same stuff that I post every day, I don't need to read that every day. I don't need to live in the echo chamber, and I just look at it and I look at, people, it's like you talk about, like, you don't really ever get trolled. Right. And I think, again, that's representative of the content you put out, but it's probably also representative of just the people you attract right through that, and I think that's always like a canary for me, when I look at people's pages. If I'm looking at their page, I'm like, this is nothing but people yelling at you. Like, that's either by design or you're just wrong a lot. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I agree. I think it's like people need to understand with the social media that what you get out of it is kind of what you actively try to get out of it. You can definitely screen the type of stuff that you don't want to see, and you can, at the same token, you can kind of have your own belief system like propped up and have smoke blown up your ass and all this sort of stuff. So it's definitely about finding a balance with it all. And I mean, I agree with you, dude. Like, I don't have time to argue with people on the internet, but I'm happy to like debate and have my ideas challenged. Like, that's the beauty of it, is that I can have somebody on the other side of the world do that and provide a perspective that I don't have. But it requires you to kind of use social media in a really conscious way, which is kind of the challenge with it. And by the same token as well, I mean, like, there's a bit more to, we can take this even further with just exposing yourself to different ideas. I think like a lot of trainers and people who are into fitness tend to have that their entire life revolve around that, because like we tend to be like, we were probably all decent athletes at school, like maybe not amazing, but decent. We love training. We were pretty good at it. We got into training. So what did we do in our spare time? We trained, we coached people, we read about training. You never get exposure to any freaking ideas outside of the gym, man.
Yeah.
And now when we're on social media and you follow like 300 other powerlifters, like, guess what? All you're going to freaking see is like squat, bench, deadlift PRs, dude. Like, you're not going to see anything else. Like,
singlets,
you need to expand your
plates.
Oh, yeah. Like clouds. Yeah, exactly. Clouds of chalk and freaking, yeah, it's intense. So, I think the general idea with like just calibrating social media so that it can work for you is a good one. But then, I mean, outside of that, I think exposing yourself to different ideas out in the world as well is super, super important. Like I always tell people, I rarely read any nonfiction.
Yeah, we talk
I like
about
reading
that a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like reading fiction stuff because it just exposes me to different ideas. And like, okay, maybe it's a little bit of a long line between that and saying, yeah, it makes me a better coach. But I think it does make me a more well-rounded individual, right? And helps me think in a different way.
Yeah, no, and well, we talk about that even with our groups, right? Because it's especially when you're looking at like fiction books, like the hero's journey is a huge thing, right? That's imprinted psychologically in humans, like from way back, right? And like if things don't follow that storyline, like we get all kinds of just like emotional triggers that go off, right? So when you start looking at even how you interact with people as a coach, like you are the guide in that hero's journey, right? Like your job is to help them get over whatever that obstacle or barrier in their way is. And I do think there are a lot of semblances to draw where it can absolutely make you a better coach to have a better understanding of what that timeline looks like for your athletes, right? And as they struggle along and how you can motivate them and give them more tools to kind of go through that process. Like I think more coaches need to understand that is a big part of the training process. And it's not all biomechanics and energy systems and macros and program design or whatever. There is a huge relationship and emotional concept that kind of underlies the entire thing. That when you look at really good coaches and you look at like the longevity of their careers, you look at how the retention of their clients, their client acquisition, it's almost always coaches who understand how to communicate and interact with their clients. And it's not always the X's and O's and kind of the more technical aspects of things that they're talking about. It is about their life, right? And like a lot of, if you train Gen Pop people, you better be able to talk about movies and books and so like they don't give a fuck about the other stuff. Like it's like that's a rough conversation if you're just trying to talk biomechanics and kinematics with them over the course of a session. It's gonna be a boring 60 minutes.
Excuse me, Susan. We're gonna look at building up some more tibial internal rotation on that left side. It's like she's like, "What? I don't know what you're saying."
Where's my tibia?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Like whenever I've been coaching Gen Pop, it's like, do you feel this in the front of your thighs? And do you feel this in the back of your thighs?
Yeah.
It's not like, do you feel your medial hamstrings activating to posteriorly tuck your pelvis as you go through this hip hinge?
No.
Far out, man. Come on, we spoke about this last week.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't you remember this?
I can't believe they have to explain this to you every single session. I'm getting so frustrated.
Yeah, dude, for real. No, it's big, and the more of that experience you get, I think it also then makes you kind of happier in the job, so to speak, because you're actually getting a better respite from like constantly talking fitness all the time.
It's variability, right? That's all it is when you look at specificity versus variability on any continuum. If you can detach yourself from the gym, like that's something like we always talk to coaches and you're like, okay, so like, what do you do for fun? I train. Okay, what do you do to work? I train people. It's like, cool. Like who you hang out with in your like off hours? Other trainers. What do you do for fun? We lift weights. We hike. and we go to healthy restaurants, and we drink. It's just
Have you seen these abs? I haven't eaten a carb since 2007, Kyle.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like, oh man, like you're in it. You're so far in it that you don't even know like what normal people are anymore. Like that's problematic for you, you know. And so it's like you said, it's one of those things that most of us just like fell into because we weren't good at other stuff. Like like we were all like pretty good, but like obviously we're not professional athletes. Like it took us so far, and we kind of fell into training because it was another way to kind of, you know, replicate that competitive environment of something, physical environment of some kind. You know, and it's just like, okay, like like you always hear like the coach backstory. Oh, what'd you do? It's like, well, just like everybody else, I was Division II small college lacrosse player, and I tore my ACL and spent a lot of time in rehab. And
the grades weren't that good.
I was
not that smart.
I was always undersized and had to be the really hard worker. You know, my coaches called me like quote unquote gritty. Like I had a lot of heart. And then I found the weight room and training, and I loved it. And it's just like, man, like, you too? Cool.
Oh, so you're a carbon copy of the last 150 people we spoke to. Awesome.
Oh, dude. Yeah, it's all so familiar. It's like hurting a little bit.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you saw into my soul. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think I've seen a little bit more. There's a little bit more flavor in the industry now, which is cool. Like there are definitely more people getting into it, and like some smarter people, which is pretty awesome. But definitely, you know, as we spoke about, you get into those echo chambers, man, and it's like you emerge from this tunnel after like 5 years, going like, whoa, heck, there's other stuff here. What?
Oh yeah. And there's other stuff that people just like also like vehemently disagree with you.
Yeah.
Like emotionally like charged, like, and you're just like, whoa, like really? You don't like this thing that I've spent all this time and invested all this time and money and resources and you do it.
Like if you disagree with them, they will fight you if they ever see you at a conference or anything. Like you'll get in a fist fight with this person over disagreeing with something.
Yeah, Matt and I have been canceled by entire systems.
Yeah.
Over the last 6 months because we posted about strength training. Like we're just like, oh man. So
it's all right. Those pillow fists wouldn't do that much.
It's hard to fight in khakis, Matt, in a bucket.
Khakis and Crocs.
So, I mean, we went way off the rails, but, you know, we're going to ask our second. I'm going to go for question number 2 now. So it's just from
we promised you this wasn't very serious.
Like we told you this was
I love it. And I love it.
Unstructured as it gets. So from a business perspective, you know, who do you work with? I know you've also just kind of moved around quite a bit also. So I'm assuming it's almost entirely remote at this point. Like what's your day-to-day look like? Because I think that is kind of an interesting concept as someone who travels and then works with a bunch of people remotely, has a platform. Like what's that?
Well, yeah, man. I mean, I feel super lucky because like I set my own schedule every day kind of thing, which is pretty sweet. You know, I did years and years of like the 4:30 a.m. up, rise and shine, you know, like it still freaking looks like midnight outside and got to get to the gym and that sort of stuff. But
it's terrible that you have to caveat that because I have to do that with people too, being a remote business. It's like, hey, I fucking train people. Don't insinuate.
I did my time.
Yeah, like I'll get like 22-year-old kids that are just like, oh, he's a remote trainer.
Have you ever coached a person in person? It's like, bro, I did 1,400 sessions a year for 8 years. Like, what are you saying?
Fuck out of here, man.
Exactly. Totally. But no, yeah. So now I decided to go traveling like literally about 2 weeks before every border on the planet closed last year. So the timing was perfect, but
nice.
Here we are.
I do remember last time we spoke to you, you got stuck in Europe for a while.
Yeah. That's right. That is right. I'm still stuck here. I'm coming to you from Gothenburg in Sweden right now. So it's pretty cool. I mean, like it's given us a lot of opportunities. So it's great. But yeah, I mean, I mostly work with people who like, there's a good proportion of coaches in there, like maybe 25-30% of my clients are actual trainers as well, I guess, because they want to learn a little bit more about how to deliver training and nutrition to people in a way that actually kind of fits in with their life and makes sense, without kind of compromising too much, and so I would say the average person who comes to me is someone who just like really freaking loves training, but it's kind of gotten in the way, if that makes sense. Like they train too much, and they don't allow themselves to eat like a grain of rice, or shit like that. So that's the main kind of person I work with. And obviously that ranges from people who are like have only been into training for a year or two, all the way up to people like myself who maybe been into training for like 15, 20 years, and they're just like really stuck in their ways. So that's mainly who I work with. And so for me, it's a case of, I do a lot of like personal communication with people. I try and make sure that I'm giving them like videos and voice clips and that sort of stuff instead of, typed emails and that kind of thing, so that they get a little bit more of a tone of voice and that kind of thing. So my days are often making videos to speak to people. I write their programs, obviously. I talk them through the nutrition, but a big portion of it, and mostly what I do through my check-ins and through like I make online modules, education modules and stuff for my clients. It's all around kind of understanding what your motivations are and what your priorities are, and the processes that it takes for you to achieve what you want to achieve, and all that kind of stuff, which, once you've learned how to use macros and like how to squat, I mean, that's really what's going to make you the biggest difference in your life. Right. So I guess that's mostly what I do. But a big part of it is like, I like the science. I like the understanding exactly all the mechanisms and all that kind of stuff, so that I can go ahead and ignore them and just tell somebody that like, hey, try and get to bed 15 minutes earlier. But so I spend a big portion of my day doing that. I'll get up, I'll go for a walk, I'll drink tons of coffee, I'll deal with client stuff for like 4 or 5 hours, and then I'll dive in and do my own research and reading and that kind of stuff, try and keep up with the literature. And occasionally you find something that's kind of like, cool, this has advanced my understanding a bit and I was a little bit wrong before, but most of the time it's kind of like, yep, cool, just file that away for a little bit. It's not really going to change anything I do, but I find it interesting. And that's kind of what I do day to day, man. So I find that sort of stuff fun, but it's, I guess, not for everybody.
Well, I mean, for the clientele that you work with too, like what you're talking about with the people who haven't allowed themselves to have like a free meal in years, or they only do, or all they do is training. That just has to be a very rewarding thing for you to see when these people are starting to earn their actual lives back, and they're starting to become humans again, as opposed to just these like little robots, like just little like squat machine robots that just squat and go home and just lay in bed until they have to squat again.
Yeah, dude. And the cool thing is that you can get part of that life and flexibility back, but then they get freaking better results anyway physically. Like they end up squatting more, they end up growing more muscle, and they're doing it by training like 20% less or something, or being more flexible. Like it's funny how all of that stuff kind of intermingles. So that's super satisfying. I really love that stuff. I really, really like that. But that's also why you don't see me post like tons of transformation pictures or like anything like that, because it's kind of not what I'm about. I don't really care about that. And I don't want to attract those people who are like, hey, can you get me shredded in 8 weeks? Like I can, but I don't really want to, So
there's people who want to do that, and you want to fit in with them.
There's enough people out there doing that shit, so I don't want to be another one of those guys.
Yeah.
I want to give you the ability to enjoy your life.
It's like, so there's this wonderful thing. It's like, if you enjoy your training, you probably actually are going to get more out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's this wild concept that people like, I keep reading on the internet that like emotion doesn't matter from a training perspective. And I'm just like, we're human beings, like,
but like liking it.
Yeah. But like human, like if you've ever been around real humans, like 90% of the decisions they make are emotionally based and not rational. Like,
nah, bro, you're wrong. It's all about that grind.
Yeah,
you ain't hating it. You ain't training, man.
Yeah. If you're doing things because you like it, like go fuck yourself.
Yeah, you're a pussy. You ain't grinding hard enough.
That's not good. Yeah, it's like
I hate waking up early, and I'm up at 2:30 a.m. every day just because I hate myself enough.
I'm up before you, and I post my alarm clock on my stories just so everybody else sees it.
Yeah, that's just right. So you feel bad about yourself, because I hate myself that much.
The other nugget you brought out, which Matt and I, we actually talked about this on our last podcast a little bit, and Matt and I like rant and our normal conversations are basically us just hating everybody in the industry, but luckily
including ourselves.
Nobody hates me more than me.
Yeah, it's very true.
I feel like this is fair. But I think that's something we talk about a lot, is like the industry right now, like you talked about like macros and squats, and you're probably going to be okay. It's like the industry now is so just, we've searched every corner and we've exhausted that bit of marketing now, that we're so motivated to give up the big rocks for the little rocks, right? Where everything's about like, hey, we know all this other stuff works, but we're going to fight you on the 2%. We're going to talk about micros that probably don't matter. And we're going to talk about like your prep exercises, even though it probably doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter at all, probably, respective to how you're actually training yourself, right?
I think everybody who is listening to this podcast just turned it off, Kyle.
They
immediately.
I'm gonna get canceled again. I tried to leave out respiration. I didn't mention that.
It's going to be just a bunch of angry faces when people are reposting this one. Don't listen to these guys.
They hate everything. They think you shouldn't breathe and you should hold your breath for your entire life. And it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, like this stuff it's right, but it's probably not important respective to these other things that are actually like much lower hanging fruit for people. And
totally.
And I think that's like the internet in a nutshell from a fitness and nutrition perspective. Like we fight about the minutia to give us something to hold on to from a belief system perspective, right? It's like nobody's really fighting over the stuff that's important, so we can't market that. And so now it's just like we fight over the minutia in a way that somehow will differentiate us from our competitors or align us with a bigger, better tribe, which will get us more. It's all fighting over resources at this point, right? It's like any other tribal type system.
It's all about, honestly, right now with that, it's all about the InstaClout. Because if you can get those 7 or 8 different people with bigger followings to share your stuff because you agree with them, you might have a better chance of getting more people, and that just deepens the pit that you're digging in that same echo chamber.
Yeah.
And you just start burying yourself with it because.
Dude, validation's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's really hard. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like there's so much like technically correct stuff that I'm like, but it doesn't fucking matter. Like,
it's like
I don't know. And so there's all this shit where it's like, this guy's got the secret because yes, he's technically correct. Yeah, that is actually better, or that is actually optimal, but like clinical significance, 0, dude. Like no one, it does not fucking matter. Like it's so frustrating, but you're right. I mean, that's really what people get off on over social media. And so I think that has to be separated from nuance, because nuance is important, but nuance is understanding where that stuff applies to an individual situation rather than like, here's minutia that actually doesn't have any impact whatsoever.
And it's memorizing details versus actually applying.
Exactly.
Right. Like, and I think that's where people get super caught up, and they read a book or they go to a 3-day seminar and they learn a system or they learn a model, and they don't understand how to contextually apply it across different individuals or different populations. And they don't understand that, hey, this same model probably shouldn't be applied for geriatrics and highly competitive power lifters the same way, right? And you try to talk to them about it and they're like, no. and the famous line back though is oh, you just don't understand it well enough. Like those are
Usain Bolt and my grandmother are not the same person.
William Crozier,
but they could be.
And my 9-year-old probably shouldn't be doing the same exercise selections.
And like we've all fallen into that trap. Like I fell into that trap really hard for like 18, 19 months. And then it's kind of like we talked about in the beginning. Now that the content and everything that everybody's posting is different, people are like, oh, you just don't get it because you don't post that stuff. It's like, bro, I was there like 2 years ago. Like,
don't worry about it. I've been there.
I've been there. I'm on the other side of it now. Trust me.
King of Mount Stupid.
Yes.
I had a castle. Yeah. I had a stable with some horses up there. Like I was living the dream on Mount Stupid like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, actually that happens every like 6 months or so. This is where these posts come out where I'm like, man, I was wrong. If I look back 6 months, like, holy shit, like, I can't believe how much my thinking has evolved in such a short period of time. And then I think, like, man, what about 2 years ago or 5 years ago, or God forbid, when I first got in the industry, like 15 years ago, like, holy shit, it's just another world.
But what's crazy, because we talk about this all the time too, like if I look back to, it's been 15 years. Like I was training my first clients at like 21, 22 years old in Manhattan. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. And at the same time,
but you knew the actual anatomical terms for them though, correct?
That, I didn't at that point, right? And at the same time, like I was helping my clients get better. Like nobody got worse working with me. I didn't hurt anybody. People lost weight. People got stronger. People's like knee pain, quote unquote, dissipated over time. And you start looking at the evolution of like all the acronyms that, you've accrued throughout that time. And it's like, wow, like I did this acronym that I now, not my tribe talks all this shit on, and I helped a bunch of people. And then I did that acronym and used that a lot with this whole population. And, everybody hates it now, but I helped a lot of people. Yeah. And it's just like, like, man, like everything fucking works if you can get people to come in consistently and you're not stupid. And reckless. Like it's not as hard as we all want to make it out to be. And that doesn't mean don't get educated. It means don't become emotionally invested in a singular education model. Like
absolutely.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem is like if you're getting an emotional response for somebody talking negatively about any particular system, there's not a problem with the system. The problem is with you.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, totally agree with that. I mean, there's a lot to be said for just like turning up and doing that consistently, right?
It's wild. I think is that a Tony Gentilcoreism where it was like the 3x52 model where somebody's like, hey, what's the best split for a newbie lifter? And he's like 3x52 and they're like, what? And he's like 3 times a week for 52 weeks.
Yeah, love that.
Show up and do anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're going to progress in a linear fashion for a while.
Yeah, and it's like when Luke, when you're talking about the people who get caught up in the minutia, it's people looking at like these really in-depth like shoulder mechanics, but they can't get their clients to walk more than 400 steps a day. It's like, you should touch that one first.
Yeah, totally.
Get them off the couch
everywhere, man. But like that's the thing, and then like the thing that you got to focus on fucking changes every month. Hey, like I read like Why We Need to Sleep by Matthew Walker. So now like the big thing I'm going to talk about is sleep all the time. It's important, man, but fuck, if a guy's sleeping 7 hours a night and you take him to 7.5 hours a night, that doesn't fucking matter. Like
30% performance boost.
Oh, dude, it drives me insane. Like
that's a lower ROI than a lot of stuff.
Yeah, seriously. Like there's a difference between like sleeping less than 5 hours a night versus 7 hours a night, right?
Yeah,
it's insane.
You see it like again, like whether it's nutrition or whether it's training or whether it's physical therapy, like, and everything's cyclic. And I love it. I love talking to young coaches because they haven't been through a full cycle yet. Right? Yeah. We've seen like these like fads, like cycles.
It hasn't come around again.
Like 2 to 3 times out. I'm waiting, like foam rolling is going to come back in like 6 months.
Yeah, 2023 is looking real good for SMR.
It's going to be the year for SMR and stretching. People are going to get obsessed with Golgi tendon mechanics again. And all of a sudden that's going to be like the mobility training. People are going to be like, oh, like you tried like these articulated like rotations and these respirations, like, where you lost, like, I'm just gonna lay on this lacrosse ball, like you're wasting all kinds of time, right?
Got to smash those tissues, bro.
It's all about tissue smashing, but it's all gonna come around, right? Because people need something new to talk about, like, and again, part of that is probably like even all the way down into like dopaminergic, anticipatory, like reflex, right? Like we need something new to always chase, even if it's just an idea or a concept. But it's like you see the new coaches that are coming in and you see them where they're coming in and they're so heavily invested and they're just like, this is the way, this is the only thing. And then it's like 6 months from now, they're just like, oh shit. And you're like, hey, be prepared to do that. And you need to start making more posts like Luke, where you just talk about being wrong. And your new stuff actually sets you up for future posts, which is an excellent Instagram model, which I appreciate.
It really is. That is a really good content strategy.
Like, it's like my stuff now is just material for like 6 months from now. This is great.
It's perfect. Yeah. Always going to be more shit to post about.
I'm always
exactly.
I'm wrong. Like, and that's always like, that's only even my new response sometimes to the trolls, where they're just like, this is wrong. I'm just like, I'm sure it is. I just don't have anything better to do yet, right?
Yeah.
You want to give me some books to tell me about something better, or you just want to yell at me on the internet and be a troll? Like, cool, man. Like,
they just usually give that one a like and then leave.
It's just like, oh, okay, great. It's the guy with like no profile picture that follows 5,000. It's never posted again. It's that I know you guy. So we kind of went into our third question preemptively, I think, a little bit, but
we got to always ask it.
We just have to ask it, so it's like on record.
Yes.
We ask everybody, but it's really the grind your gears question, and the things that you see either online, or, I mean, obviously we're not doing a lot in person right now, but even like in your old in-person facility experiences, watching, coaches interact with their clients, or just the culture of a facility or whatever, but things that just kind of frustrate you, and you feel like, just, if you could change anything in the industry, like this would be like the couple things.
Name names if you want to, because for podcast number 2, we'll surprise them with a debate, and it'll be great.
Face to face. Oh my god!
Like,
hi guys, discuss.
Yeah, there's 4 windows on here.
What? Yeah. You guys got another host, or what's going on?
Nah, it's Lyle McDonald. He's coming after you.
Yeah, wow. Jeez, on his like 360p webcam, man. Come on. Oh, I love it. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is like, what I find really frustrating is people not being able to think for themselves. Like, so if you give a piece of information, as if you're someone who's curating information on social media, or in a course, or doing a mentorship, or writing somebody a program, anything, like, that isn't the entirety of fucking human knowledge in one post. You know what I mean? It's like, this is putting forward an idea. It's not the end of the idea. This is the start of how you interact with this concept, So when I post about something on Instagram, I would sit there and think, okay, I know that there's going to be like these dozen questions that people are going to ask me as soon as I post this. So I'm going to try and answer them ahead of time. Yeah. And now I've stopped doing that, because it's like, dude, if you can't fucking think for yourself on this one and come to your own conclusion, I can't help you by giving you the answer. I am not God who fucking understands everything about this concept. As you know, I'm wrong about shit all the time, and I'm going to be posting about this in 6 months' time, saying how wrong I was. So it's just like thinking for yourself and being like, hey, how might this apply to my specific scenario? Maybe it's not even relevant. Like, instead of asking the freaking question about like, hey, how do I coach blind kids if I can't cue them? Dude, obviously that doesn't apply to you. Like, think about it for half a second. That's my biggest thing. And I think that sometimes it's the fault of the coach for enabling people to have that sort of learned helplessness, where like, I have to rely on my coach to know exactly what I need to do all the time. I hate that. A big part of what I try and do as a coach is be like hands off when I need to be. So it's partly the coach's problem, and it's partly the client's problem by being like, hey, I'm outsourcing this so I don't have to think. It's like, I get wanting to have the structure and not wanting to like take the effort to write your own training program. But at the same time, like, you can solve a lot of these problems by yourself with minimal effort if you just stop and think about it for half a second.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things I do when I get clients like that. I just kind of leave them on scene for like, or leave them on like unread for like 4 hours. Cause it's always a question like, oh my God, this piece of equipment is taken. What can I do instead? I have all of these things that would replace it perfectly, but I don't know what to do unless you tell me. Yeah. I'm just going to let that one go, and you can do that on your own.
Yeah. Exactly, man.
Yeah, we're just trying to build a little bit of like independence into your program, and some self-efficacy, and see if you can figure that shit out. But
I really like what you said about that learned helplessness thing, because that is a huge thing that's going on in the industry right now, where if you don't listen to exactly what I tell you, then you're useless, and you can't do anything ever for yourself.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, right? Because like as a coach, listen, I charge a premium rate. I think people want to be able to like depend on you to get a lot from you, right? Like they want to feel like they're getting something for what they pay for. And I want to provide that, but at the same time, I know that for this person to be to improve their well-being, to improve their ability to feel confident in their own training and their nutrition and their life in general, they need to have self-efficacy. So it's like, okay, there's that balance between spoon feeding and kind of not really providing the service that they're paying for. Like you got to find that balance, and it's very challenging to do. But when it happens and someone fucking figures something out by themselves, and you can see them flourish, it's like, dude, that's money. That's really, really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, we run into that too, like on our side of things from a training perspective, just because of mainly my content more so than Matt's. But people like get a program and be like, "Where's all the prep stuff?"
Yeah.
And we're like, well, your assessments was really good. And
You don't need it.
You don't need it, right? And they're and they literally, like, we've had clients leave and go to other coaches.
Yeah, they quit because of that.
Because they wanted to do more just bullshit that was going to be a huge time waster for them. It wasn't like, it's like, hey, like we do this stuff to get you to the training part. And once we get to a point where you don't need this stuff anymore, like it's out of your program.
Yep.
I've actually had clients like complain when I've hidden the warm-ups tab on their program. They're like, "Where did it go? You don't need it anymore."
It's
like,
done.
It's
you
gone.
know what your warm-up for your squat is? Lighter squats, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's it. Fuck me. I read this quote once where this guy is like, and it's super popular. People repost this shit all the time. The warm-up is the most important part of the workout.
God.
It's like, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the workout. You wouldn't be warming up for anything.
Right.
What the fuck are you talking about? It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
I saw that recently. Like I saw that probably a couple weeks ago. It got sent to me. And I was just like, this fucking concept won't die.
The best was when Barben posted that meme where it was like, you should take your warm-up as seriously as your workout. And it had the Captain America meme underneath it going, no, I don't think I will. I was like, yes!
That's actually what it was, I think. And it's just like how back ass can we get like with this?
Yeah, seriously.
You know, I mean, it's just like and that's what we always talk with people about in our circles. Like the training will always be the show, right? That like we adapt to stimulus. You literally just have to look at the highest stimulus in that hour and understand that that's going to create the biggest physical or physiological adaptations long term.
Yep.
And the stuff that you're doing that's laying on the ground and isn't even under gravity is not going to do that much outside of creating sensation.
Sensation.
My 40 minutes of Shavasana that I hit the other day was pretty damn good for my recovery. That felt great.
You know what? I took a nap and it was probably just as good for my recovery.
That's exactly what I did. I just laid on the platform at my gym and just fell asleep. It was awesome.
That's the way to do it.
You got a little drool on the side of your face.
Oh, whoops.
My bad, guys.
Yeah.
Matt walks around covered in chalk and drool. That's how he lives his life.
Typical powerlifter.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very stereotypical.
The drool isn't even coming from like sleeping. The drool is just my natural state. It's just
yeah. General mouth breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
James Nestor's going to get you. That's the new book. That's the one that's supplanted Matthew Walker's book. Is now it's just
bro.
Yeah.
It's and again, like useful stuff. Read the book, enjoyed the book. It's cool. But
Nestor's a great author.
But now everybody is on that kick, and it's like it's the new thing. And it's like, oh, here we go. That's all I'm going to hear about for the next 6 months.
Nasal strips sold out across the nation.
Mouth tape. Like if you invested in mouth tape, you might have made like $20 off of that.
Ooh.
That's the true pandemic of 2021 is that there's no more nasal strips.
Nobody's able to find mouth tape or nasal strips.
That's the true problem here.
Dude, if mouth tape would have gone Bitcoin, like we could have all, like we would even be
to the moon.
The podcast wouldn't even exist. This would have been done.
We would have actually had that castle on Mount Stupid that we were talking about
like,
earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, hey, Lou, we have to delay this because we're buying an island next week.
But we'll fly you out on our private jet to come do this podcast live.
I'm going to be the new Tony Stark because I invested in mouth tape Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That might be in our title somewhere. I don't know. But
Mouth tape Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's the whole podcast title.
You'll get a flood of Redditors coming in being like,
Oh.
what is this? Wait, what? I don't want to miss out.
What stock is this? Stocks only go up. Which one?
What's MTP? What's MTP? That might be one of our better trolls. We might have to roll with that. But yeah, it's so just winding it up. This has been awesome. But where can everybody find you if they want to work with you? If you want to work with other people. If you don't, just be like, peace out. I don't want to work with anybody.
I don't have an Instagram.
Who listens to this podcast? Like, it's gonna be a problem.
It's all right. There'll be like 8 people who listen to this podcast total. So you might get reached out by like one person. It'll be okay.
Yeah, perfect. It'll be some bloke with like, hey, so what's the investment strategy again?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing, guys? What are we buying up? No, my Instagram is _ Luke Tulloch, and my website is luketulloch.com. If you want to talk to me, feel free. I don't really do trolls and that sort of stuff. So if you want to troll me, forget it. I'm not interested. I will not fight back. I'll just mute you, block you, whatever. But that's pretty much it. All my stuff's there. Who knows how long it'll go for. I actually sort of look forward to the day when social media doesn't have to be a thing anymore. Like, I do enjoy interacting with people and giving out information and trying to provide some food for thought, but it gets very wearying sometimes. So
it's tedious out here on the interwebs.
I got to plug something for you because you have one of the best newsletters that I've ever subscribed to. And it's one of the only ones that I actually consistently read and don't just immediately delete. So if you guys are listening to this, please go subscribe to Luke's newsletter. You will not regret it. It's awesome.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's a very good
cool.
Yeah, I've got a lot of newsletters that like come through and I'm just like, I've got a Con Ed folder that I always think I'm going to go through and just like read all of these things sometimes. And I haven't. It's like 500 emails deep at this point. But yours is one of the only ones that I actually read on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
it's really, really good content, and it's very well written in a way that makes it really, really easy for anybody of any education level to understand, which I think is a hugely important tool, especially in the age of social media and the age of like 2021 fitness. Like, I think that's a very, very valuable thing that a lot of people can get a lot out of if they subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, actually, just like quickly, like that was a big thing that I had to change. Actually, if there's anybody listening to this that's like a fit pro or something like that, is just how you communicate to people that are actually reading your posts, as opposed to like, listen, I love a mechanism. I love a fancy word. Like, the more syllables, the better. But I just realized that doesn't cut the mustard with most people. So you gotta try and speak to your audience properly. Makes a huge difference. Like, the information will be basically the same, and sometimes even the less words you use, the better, which is like easier for you. So that's cool.
Oh yeah. When I write something complicated, it's literally me just writing because I feel like writing, and I don't care who reads it.
Yeah.
And,
it's for yourself, right?
Yeah, and it's like my blog, because I'm too lazy to have a real one. It's like every like fourth Instagram post is just me going off on some tangent, but they never do as well as just like posting a few videos and explaining what I'm doing in simple terms for people. And it's just, if they can see it and they can understand it, they can assimilate it. They can, again, it's, if they have to, as soon as somebody has to like Google search something, you're done. You're over. It's done.
Yeah. I don't know what that word means. Goodbye.
I'm going to just keep scrolling to the
too easy to scroll. That's it.
The next 15 fitness people that I follow. And it's probably glute kickbacks on a Stairmaster. So you just drove somebody to that.
Yeah.
That's on you.
Awesome, man. Well, this is an awesome conversation. We appreciate you coming on. And
Luke, thank you so much.
So,
this is a lot of fun. Thank you very much for hopping on. I think this will be a good one for people to get some good stuff out of.
Yeah, great to chat.